Vinicius was the best player in the world last season, and he deserves the Ballon d'Or over Rodri and Bellingham. He scored or assisted multiple times in each of the Champions League knockout matches. He is the new Mr. Champions League, stealing the title from noodle-haired Ronaldo. But there's another man Vinicius reminds me of. Another Real Madrid player who was a Brasileiro too. The step-over king, the next Pele. More talented than Ronaldinho, some even said. The hot-stepping Brazilian sensation was once football's glittering future. Hyped by the greats and destined for stardom, but how will history remember one of the greatest showmen ever? Photo evidence remains of the day Diego Maradona breached enemy territory during the mid-noughties. There stood the Argentine icon in a Brazilian hotel room flanked by two of the Seleção's most shining stars, Ronaldinho and Robinho. It would have been quite a front three. The grinning samba double act, dovetailing with deadly Diego. That famous picture represents a particular mood at a particular moment in time, though one in which it was believed these three attackers represented the past, present, and future of football. When he first poured into the spotlight, Robinho was described as a defining figure of his generation. Like Diego and Ronaldinho before him, the twinkle-toed talent, all whirring feet and wonder, was expected to wrench the World Cup back to South America with his own might. He can surpass my achievements, claimed a confident Pele. We have to thank God that another Pele has landed at Santos. Initially, such compliments were not empty hyperbole. Robinho did not just glide with the ball, he danced with it, like Pele did, with all those crackly black and white reruns. One referee in Brazil cautioned him for his stepovers, trying to save the kid from winding up older defenders who might hack his ankles in spite. He scored a goal every other game at Santos, and former World Cup winners Carlos Alberto Pereira and Zico backed him for inevitable glory. The first sign of casualty in Robinho's life was when thugs broke into his home and kidnapped his mother in the middle of a family dinner, stuffing her in the back of a car. This was traumatic as Robinho had to witness it at such a young age. The thugs found out how much Robinho earns, and Robinho caved into the demands of the thugs and paid them 80,000 euros. For him, he didn't care. He just wanted his mum back in one piece. In Africa and Latin America, it's quite common for players or wealthy businessmen's parents to get kidnapped. This was also a sign that it may be time to leave Brazil. In come the Galacticos. In 2004, after a grounding Clásico defeat to Barcelona, Real Madrid president Florentino Perez was met with chants of sign Robinho at the airport. YouTube had yet to launch, but the young star's trademark pedaladas, aka stepovers, had already been beamed far and wide, including to the world's best player, Zinedine Zidane, who was said to be blown away by Robinho's 7-stepover mockery of Corinthians defender Rogerios. A year later, he was Zizou's teammate when Real stumped up 24 million euros. Then, 21, Robinho had been the worst-kept secret at Santos since his 18th birthday, having helped the club seal their only 2 National League titles since Pele himself was in the team. Perez's glitzy Galactico project had delivered Champions League titles in 2000 and 2002, but lost its sparkle. With no Vicente Del Bosque to manage the Eagles for 2 seasons and no Claude Makelele anchoring their midfield, European domination had quickly become a thing of the past. The president eyed fresh blood. Sergio Ramos and Julio Baptista were snared from Sevilla that summer. Thomas Graveson's grit secured him a baffling Bernabeu transfer, while Cecino, Antonio, Cassano, Carlos Diogo, and Pablo Garcia rounded up a curious sweep of business. Robinho was clearly the headline act, a walking Nike advert who could keep Los Blancos marketable long after David Beckham and Ronaldo had departed. This was the player Perez could build his next generation around, both on the pitch and posters. It took Robinho 24 hours to illuminate Europe upon landing in La Liga. A day after he had arrived at his new home, Real were being held 1-1 at newly promoted Cádiz, with 25 minutes remaining. The stage was set for their glimmering star to make his grand entrance. Tucking in his oversized number 10 shirt as he bounced on the touchline, Robinho enjoyed the last moments of a life unburdened by mountainous expectations. The Brazilian was shaking off jet lag and had only met his teammates briefly, but manager Vanderlei Luxemburgo was effectively letting him off the leash, daring Robinho to surprise everyone with what he could do. Sure enough, he announced himself with an audacious sombrero over midfielder Andres Flukin. Even the home crowd gasped. From there, it became his show, a sublime exhibition of slalom runs and deft passes. It was the debut of dreams. "He's phenomenal," gushed fanboy Zidane after Madrid's 2-1 victory. "When a team has players like him, it's not a problem to be too attacking. With Robinho, we will be better and better, and for our adversaries, it will be worse and worse." Even his victims were spellbound. "Robinho is pure poetry," remarked Cadiz director Michael Robinson. "I enjoyed seeing one man unstitch our whole team in just 20 minutes. Barcelona, meanwhile, had not long released their own South American starlet into the wild. 4 months prior, Argentine Academy produced Lionel Messi and had become the youngest ever scorer, and the similarities with Robinho were clear. Same height, same low center of gravity, same explosive ability. But where Robinho was an extrovert with Pele on his shoulder, Messi was an introvert. It had required adopted big brother Ronaldinho telling teammates, and indeed 4-4-2 in 2005, that his protege flashed in November 2005 for a Bernabeu Classico billed as the best number 10s in the game facing off. Zidane versus Ronaldinho. The subplot of the Starlets' battle simmered in the background. Too, if he hadn't, Robinho would have been in for a one-on-one with goalkeeper Victor Valdés. Barca swiftly instigated a counter and worked the ball to Messi his night in Madrid. The media were stinging for the criticism of Luxembourg's men. El País inserted that Messi had triumphed in the virtual duel against his young rival. Florentino Perez's policy has once again been brought low, sighed the Guardian. Question: it had been a weary few months in Madrid, exacerbated by the Blaugrana beating Arsenal to conquer Europe for the first time in 14 years. It was time for a change. Robinho, the young prince waiting for Zidane's sizable shadow, had endured a mixed debut campaign in Europe. He'd looked world-class in bursts, but not often enough in a Madrid team on its last legs. The 2006 World Cup compounded a testing start. Unlike at the Bernabeu, Brazil was not a side in need of major surgery, to the point where Robinho barely got a sniff in Germany. He featured in all but one of Selecao's 5 encounters, but started only the 4-1 win over Japan in the group stage. After sitting out the 3-0 thumping of Ghana in the last 16 because of a thigh strain, he made a brief appearance against France as the retiring Zidane put in one of the most breathtaking individual displays in World Cup history. Brazil bowed out before the final for the first time since 1990. Such an effortless masterclass from Zidane highlighted how much Robinho would have to improve at Madrid. That summer, the wounded Blancos hit back by appointing Fabio Capello as the boss and adding World Cup winning captain Fabio Cannavaro, Ruud van Nistelrooy, Emerson, and Mahamadou Diarra to the ranks, as well as spending the thick end of 40 million euros on youngsters Gonzalo Higuain, Fernando Gago, and Marcelo. Robinho was no longer afforded the luxury of being a Real novice surrounded by world beaters. Worse, he was no longer afforded the luxury of being a guaranteed starter at the Bernabeu. Taskmaster Capello didn't pick him in Madrid's first 6 matches of the season, but the Italian was glad he did for October's Classico. Robinho was instrumental in the crucial 2-0 home win, described in a match report as a tiny bundle of pace and stepovers throughout. After Raul netted inside 2 minutes, Robinho assisted Van Nistelrooy and was named the man of the match, banishing memories of that 3-0 defeat 11 months earlier. He was sublime in a goal and assist display against Gymnastic, but as ever, it couldn't last. His starts became more sporadic than certain, although the tricky forward scored 5 goals in Madrid's final 12 games of the season to help them secure a 30th league title. Capello was sacked 11 days later anyway. When Capello first arrived, I was still starting games regularly, but then for some reason, maybe because of my age, he put me on the bench, Robinho told FFT. I can't complain about it because he was the coach, and that was his decision. But I just couldn't be happy with the role of second-half substitute. That end-of-season run set him up perfectly for a summer in South America, where Brazil won the Copa America in Venezuela. Robinho struck 6 goals, landing both the Golden Boot and Player of the Tournament prizes. Real Madrid even won a second consecutive title in 2008 under Bernd Schuster, 18 points clear of third-place Barca. But Robinho still wasn't center stage. As Messi was asserting his dominance in Catalonia, Real were beginning to lose patience with the boy they had assumed would be his equal by now. Robinho had hardly failed in the capital, but he hadn't exactly set it alight either. And so in the summer of 2008, Real sought to find that equal. As plans developed to bring in Cristiano Ronaldo from Manchester United, Robinho became a pawn in the negotiations. President Ramon Calderon offered his services in return for the Portuguese marksman, which bruised Robinho's ego. He had always believed he would depart Madrid for Santos only when his job was complete. "I know my potential as a footballer. I know what I'm worth," stated Robinho. "I should not be talked about as currency for someone else." In the end, Ronaldo opted to remain at Old Trafford for one more season, but the damage had been done to the Brazilian, who could not forgive the perceived lack of respect from his employers. He informed Real that he could no longer become the best player in the world at their club, and they agreed. On September 1st, 2008, 24-year-old Robinho shocked the world by joining Manchester United for €42 million. It was supposed to be a landmark signal of City's intent, a welcome present from their new Abu Dhabi owners on the same day they bought the club. Instead, it proved to be one of the most tasteless deals in modern history. The Brazilian superstar apparently too proud to be a make-weight at United. Robinho had been within touching distance of signing for Chelsea, but Madrid was offered by the nouveau, rich London side's antics. Everything would have gone ahead, but they put that picture of me up on their website in a Chelsea shirt before a fee had been agreed, and Real were really upset, Robinho told FFT. The Sky Blues stepped in to spare blushes for both parties, only for the player to accidentally announce how pleased he was to have joined Chelsea. Still, the Brazilian was again handed the number 10 shirt as England's spotlights angled towards his sparkling grin. Robinho soon smoothed things over with his new supporters in the best way possible. First with a debut strike against Chelsea inside 13 minutes, then a hat-trick at home to Stoke and goals against 20, Tottenham and Arsenal. Manager Mark Hughes even handed him the captain's armband for a 2-2 draw away at Hull. Indeed, for the first half of 2008-09, Robinho lived up to his billing, even if his team didn't look like doing so. "I started well," he reflected. "Unfortunately, there weren't as many great names as there are these days." But such was Robinho's career in microcosm, fleeting brilliance, followed by disappointment. The timing of his Manchester move was miles off. Rumors suggested he told his teammates they had the mentality of a small side, while in early 2009, Robinho departed City's Tenerife training camp to return home to Brazil. With Hughes' approval, he insisted. And later he had a fist-off with fiery forward Craig Bellamy. The slope was slippery. He assisted just the one goal and didn't score any from late December to mid-April, and was even arrested and bailed after accusations of assaulting a girl in a nightclub. At 25, that Real Madrid sombrero in Cadiz was already a 4-year-old memory, an entire World Cup cycle ago. Manchester was a much smaller stage than Pele expected for Robinho when he proclaimed him his heir. But O'Reilly had been quick to completely disown him after his exit from Madrid in a toxic cloud. "Chelsea are lucky," scoffed the Brazil legend. "This is a boy who needs serious counseling." In my view, he's been badly advised. Santos' general manager, Jose Fernandes, also piled in. "We are ashamed of having produced such a player," he spat. Robinho may have featured for such institutions as Santos, Real Madrid, and Brazil, but he was not ready to be Atlas in Manchester, carrying a whole project on his shoulders. May 10th, Manchester Derby at Old Trafford was a case in point. Carlos Tevez made a goal by himself, while Robinho squandered a golden opportunity from only 8 yards out. Tevez was everything City's poster boy wasn't. A persistent underdog who made the polished star look anemic in his presence. United won 2-0. It's telling that the Blue Skies poached the Argentine in 2009 to replace their number 10, who said his time in England was not good for the Brazilian way of playing. Not my style. Robinho returned to Santos on loan in early 2010. That August, City recouped less than half the money they splashed on him, but at least this time the attacker knew which club he was heading to for €18 million. Third wheel in Milan. Between 2002 and 2011, Milan homed each of 2002's legendary trio, Rivaldo, Ronaldo, and Ronaldinho. One at a time, each past their best, but with the potential to produce pieces of magic. Robinho represented a challenge they simply couldn't turn down. He was 26 at this point, had played in 3 different countries, and was moving to a bigger, better club. Serie A was a slower league with considerably adjusted expectations. The day before, Milan had recruited Zlatan Ibrahimovic to do the dirty work up front. If Robinho didn't flourish now, he never would. Not at least after a relatively promising World Cup, where goals against Chile and the Netherlands in the last 16 and quarterfinals respectively had proved futile as Brazil lost to the Dutch in South Africa. Sure enough, he looked happier in Italy. His Manchester frown vanished, and he scored 15 goals in his debut campaign as the Rossoneri sealed Syria. Robinho, Zlatan, and Alexandre Pato arguably became Milan's last great front three, each player bagging 14 league goals for a side that totaled only 65. By now, though, the challenge of competing with Messi and Ronaldo, who each notched 53 goals in the same season, was long gone. In his second campaign for Real, Ronaldo was averaging a goal a game, impressing another former goal-scoring great. "I think he's the best because he's consistent," fawned Pele. When Ronaldinho exited Milano for Flamengo in January 2011, it signaled the end of an era. Football was no longer judged on aesthetics but pure numbers, which were escalating at an eye-popping rate. Robinho's, however, was falling. Ibrahimovic topped Syria's goal chart with 28 in 2011-12, overshadowing his teammates' meager 6 as Milan finished second to Juventus. In 2012-13, the Brazilian scored only 2 goals all season due to injury and indifferent form, despite the departures of both Ibrahimovic and Pato. The following campaign, he started just 15 league games as the clock wound down. In the summer of 2014 came the inevitable. A third spell at Santos, on loan for the second time, having almost returned twice in 2013. To no one's surprise, Robinho was left out of Luis Felipe Scolari's Brazil squad for the World Cup on home soil. It should have been a crowning moment for the 30-year-old. By the time Scolari was able to welcome him, it was a year later in the relative obscurity of Guangzhou Evergrande in China. Robinho wasn't quite done in Europe. After 2 seasons at Atletico Mineiro, he relocated to Turkey with Sivasspor and Istanbul Başakşehir, and his days at the top were now a dot on the horizon. When Tite gave him his 100th Brazil cap in January 2017, it was purely ceremonial after an 18-month hiatus from Seleção duties. Controversy was still never far away, either. That November, he was handed a 9-year jail sentence for a severe assault of a woman during his time in Milan in 2013, which he continues to deny. He has escaped prison time because of his right to appeal and Brazilian extradition laws. But that episode is the darkest in a series which have clouded his on-pitch achievements. Unlike classic Pele reruns, however, Robinho's wasted talent isn't black and white. His career can hardly be called a bust, not with multiple titles in 4 countries and that immense 2007 Copa America success, but neither. He will be revered among the greats as he was expected to be. When people look back, what will endure of the Brazilian's career? In England, it's hard not to revisit the deadline day transfer to Manchester in 2008 and consider it anything other than ill-advised. Despite that dancing ability, he was always a little out of time. He was born a tad too late for 2002 World Cup, the same for 2006's star-studded crop, and joined the Galacticos as they were disintegrating. Perhaps Robinho was merely another victim of hype. 8 major trophies and a century of Brazil caps are certainly not to be sniffed at. It just was not what the world anticipated when he posed with Maradona and Ronaldinho. As it happened, he was not to be the future of football, nor would he emulate Maradona or Pele. Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, or Messi, or even Tevez or Ibrahimovic. He didn't change in Madrid or Manchester. He simply never found his place in an era where fellow wonder kids reinvented what it means to be consistent. Remembering Robinho's Real Madrid debut now, it's tempting to imagine what could have been. Carefree and unburdened by all the fuss, just for a night he surprised everyone. Robinho was obviously talented, but also badly counseled during his early years. His agent always boasted how good he was and that he was destined to become the best player in the world, even though he was a rather incomplete player at the time he moved to Real Madrid. He could not shoot as good as, let's say, Van Persie at the time. Robinho was always selfish and arrogant, stating that his goal was to win the FIFA Golden Ball as Ronaldinho, Rivaldo, and Ronaldo did, but forgot that they managed to win these honors, achieving huge successes at their clubs. When Madrid noticed he was not becoming the player people thought he would, they turned their attention to Cristiano Ronaldo and tried to swap him over. Robinho and his agent got really angry, and he publicly asked to move to Chelsea to become the best in the world. But that move made Real Madrid even angrier at him, and they made sure he would move anywhere but Chelsea. In Manchester, he never really did anything impressive, and by the time he went to Milan, it had become clear his best days were already behind him. One should note that Neymar has the same agent as Robinho and almost turned the same way. What made the difference might be the circumstances they arrived. When Robinho arrived in Spain in the late 90s, legends like Figo, Zidane, and Ronaldo were already reaching the end of their careers, so he saw more space and fewer rivals to become a true great. As for Neymar, when he appeared to the world, Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi were already widely regarded not only as two of the greatest players of the decade, but as two of the greatest who ever played the game. So he knew his path to greatness would take a longer time and required a lot of hard work to come to fruition. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment below of what you'd like to see next.